In this video, I'm gonna share 7 delicious bread recipes you can make using just one special dough. I call it Tangzhong Brioche Dough. Brioche is by nature soft and fluffy, but by adding the Tangzhong technique to it, we take the texture to a whole nother level. It becomes unbelievably soft, pillowy, and airy. And the best part of this video is you can make this without kneading. You don't need an expensive mixer or excellent hand kneading skills. It's mess-free, budget-friendly, and beginner-proof. I could talk about how great this dough is forever. Please watch all the way until then and give some or even all 7 recipes a try. So before starting, it's so crucial to have all the ingredients ready, because some of the process moves fast and you won't have time to measure them later. So you need strong bread flour divided, whole milk, cold eggs, cold unsalted butter roughly diced, sugar, instant dry yeast, make sure it's not expired, and salt. Those are standard ingredients for enriched dough, but what makes this bread so special is this process. We're gonna make a Tangzhong, which is a dough improver made by mixing part of the flour with boiling water or milk, allowing the flour to retain far more moisture than usual. This is the secret to making the bread extraordinarily soft. So add 120 grams of the bread flour to a large bowl and have a silicone spatula ready. And place the milk over high or medium-high heat to bring it to a boil. We want to boil as quickly as possible to prevent too much moisture from evaporating. The milk will rise when boiling, so there must be some extra room in the pot. Flour is cooked and becomes a Tangzhong paste at above 65 C. To keep things simple, we wait until the mixture reaches 100 C and rises up like this. Once it starts rising, immediately pour it over the 120 grams of bread flour. Mix with a spatula until no dry flour remains. The flour instantly absorbs all the milk, and this shouldn't take more than 20 seconds. Even though this pouring scene lasts only a second, it's actually the highlight of this video. You'll see exactly how well it works once you try one of the recipes. As soon as you finish mixing, add the diced butter and keep mixing until fully melted. This is a no-knead recipe where the butter needs to be melted and the Tangzhong paste needs to cool down anyway. Adding cold butter at this point should be a great shortcut. And by the time all the butter fully melts, the mixture is still warm, but it won't cook the eggs, so we're gonna add them and give it a light mix. The cold eggs will make the mixture even cooler, but it's still too hot for the yeast, so cover and leave until it cools down to the right temperature, which depends on the weather. In winter, cool down moderately to around 35 C. If it's summer and hot, cool down completely to your room temperature. It should take around 30 to 60 minutes to cool down. 40 minutes later, mine has cooled down to the right temp, so I'm gonna get to the next. Toss in the salt, sugar, and yeast. Mix lightly. And then we're gonna puree with a hand blender. As you can see, my Tangzhong is quite stiff and can't dissolve in other liquids. In this case, it's the eggs. So we got to puree it forcefully to turn it into a smooth liquid. Scrape off the sides of the bowl once in a while so everything blends well. Once it looks smooth like this, scrape off the liquid from the blender as much as possible and get it back into the bowl. And then lastly, we're gonna dump in the rest of the bread flour, which is 480 grams. Give it a good mix until it comes together and there's no dry flour left. It's insanely sticky since eggs, sugar, butter, and Tangzhong all contribute to the stickiness. Use a dough scraper to mix from start to finish instead of your hands, or you're gonna have a bad time. You can mix however you like, but I find that lifting the liquid from the bottom to the top and repeating is the most efficient way. And at the end, switch the movement and keep pressing it down from above like this. Once it all comes together, scrape off the sides and gather it all in the middle into one piece. I changed it to clean bowl just for a video, but you don't have to. Cover and we're gonna start fermenting it for 1 hour at room temperature, which means 21 to 29 C, which you should easily be able to achieve in an air-conditioned room no matter where you live on Earth. Conveniently, yeast is active the most, almost the same as the temperature we feel comfortable, or a little higher. 1 hour later, it has puffed out like this. Gas has built up, but the structure is still too weak to hold it. You can see many holes on the surface. So let's give it a thought to build strength. Flour the work surface generously with about 1 heaping tablespoon. It's extremely sticky, especially during the first fold. Tip the dough out, dust with a generous amount of flour on top as well. Flatten out with your hands. Release air bubbles by pressing it down and make it tight and dense. And toss a little flour against the sides. These are the areas your hands will be grabbing the most, so we don't want them to be sticky. And we're gonna fold all the edges over the center. Grab an edge, stretch it outward, and fold it over the center. Grab the next edge and fold it over the center. Go to the next and repeat this process around the dough, 6 to 8 times in total. And flip the seam side down and slide your hands and a scraper underneath it and rotate to shape into a tight ball. Put it back to the bowl, cover and let it sit for another hour. During this resting process, the folded layers touch and join together. This builds a stronger structure inside all on its own. This is how you get amazing bread without having to run out of bread from prolonged hand kneading. After 1 hour, perform the second fold, which is the final fold. Just like the first one, dust with the flour, flatten it out, grab an edge, fold it over the center, and repeat. Another layers are being created. Shape into a ball. With that, our ultimate, no kneading, Tangzhong Brioche is done. You can use it for any of my recipes I'm gonna show you. Take as much as you need and make the bread you want. For example, if you wanna make my Nutella Babka, take 500 grams, shape into a ball, and make it following the instructions in the chapter. Since this recipe makes a generous amount of dough, you likely have some leftovers. You can store it in the fridge for up to 48 hours. Just cover and leave. And when you use it, just take as much as you need, ferment and bake. Cold dough takes longer for the final ferment. I will mention how long it could take in each recipe section. So before we get to the 7 easy recipes, let me quickly mention my monkey bread and cinnamon roll videos. They actually use the exact same dough we make today. Each recipe needs 700 grams of the dough. If you're interested, definitely check them out. Now, for recipe number 1, we're gonna make the ultimate burger buns. You can enjoy this super soft bread just as it is, or use it to make the best burgers ever. 1 bun uses 100 grams of the dough. Take as much dough as you need. So in my case, I wanna make 4 buns, so I take 400 grams directly from the bowl and divide it into 4 equal pieces. Next, we're gonna shape them into smooth balls. To start, always place the largest scraps on the bottom and the smaller ones on top, so that the final surface will turn out clean and beautiful. Lightly dust with the flour on the work surface and the dough itself, and flatten it out with your hands using the heel of your palm. Fold the edges inward while rotating the dough, and repeat until all the edges are folded and looks like a bowl. And pinch the seam with the palm and the base of the tongue 4 to 5 times while rotating the dough until there are no large cracks and the surface is tense. Since this dough doesn't have super strong gluten and it's still a bit sticky, so if you find it sticking to your fingers, you didn't do anything wrong. It's supposed to be. Dust with just enough flour to handle and you'll be fine. Now the shaping of burger buns is done. If you want a hot dog bun instead, just add 1 extra step. Roll the ball you just shaped into a thin, long cylinder, around 3 cm or 1 inch thin. It might look a little too thin and even impossible to hold a hot dog, but don't worry, it will expand significantly in the end. And transfer the baking tray lined with parchment paper, leaving enough space between them to rise. Let them rise for 1 to 2 hours at room temperature. If you use cold dough straight from the fridge, the final fermentation will take longer, about 2 to 4 hours, almost twice the time. If you've never handled cold dough before, There's nothing special to do except for this one adjustment. Also, while fermenting, preheat the oven to 170°C fan on or 190°C fan off. Once they rise like this, as you can see they are visibly puffed up, you can apply some egg wash, which creates a darker, shinier, and more beautiful crust. Now they are full of air and fragile. Brush very gently. And bake for 15 to 18 minutes or until the internal temperature reaches 95°C. Once that's done, take them out. It's always best practice to take the internal temperature to ensure they're fully baked rather than by feel. The less guesswork, the more success. Cool completely on a wire rack. Once cooled, cut them in half, and you can toast the cut size in a pan, which adds an extra caramelized flavor and a little crunch. Fill them with whatever you like and enjoy. It's crazy soft. It's like basically chewing on a cloud. See how squishy it is. Look at how airy it is. Look at this tearing. I can totally enjoy this bread on its own without any toppings. And also, this bread stays fresh longer. This is 24-hour and 48-hour old bread. Of course, it's getting a tiny bit firmer, but still pleasantly soft. As you can see, Tangzhong bread has a completely different nature compared to regular bread. But why? How does Tangzhong actually work? Let's break it down. As a rule, the more moisture a food or dough contains, the softer it'll be. Fresh bread is softer than stale bread because of the moisture. Fresh fruits are softer than dry fruits because of the moisture as well. Super simple, right? But just because a large amount of water makes bread softer, you can't just dump in a large amount of cold water or milk into your dough. Look at this experiment. 100 grams of bread flour and 200 grams of cold milk. It just results in runny cake batter. Try shaping a burger bun out of that. It's impossible. But if the milk is boiling hot, the exact same amount of milk, only the temperatures are different. Can you shape a burger bun out of that? It's totally possible. When flour is mixed with hot water or milk, it absorbs much more moisture than usual. Then it's locked in the flour. This is exactly how we make a soft bread with a large amount of milk without making it lose cake batter in this video. There might be more things to explain, but you can think of this as the primary reasons. So we're gonna enjoy this dough with another extremely easy recipe, cinnamon bowls. They are much easier to make than cinnamon rolls, but just as good. I mean, they require zero shaping. Take 300 grams of the dough. We wanna cut it into roughly 3 cm or 1 inch cubes. First, flour the work surface and roll it out a bit with your hands and cut with a scraper. It's okay if they're just about the same size. Perfection is against the concept of this bread. Every time you cut a piece, immediately transfer to a baking tray lined with parchment paper. Leave some distance between them so they have room to rise. Cover and ferment for 1 to 2 hours at room temperature. If your environment is cooler, it's slower to rise. If it's hot, it rises quicker. Adjust the time accordingly. Once they puff up like this, they almost double in size. Bake in the oven preheated at 170°C for 12 to 15 minutes until lightly browned. Once fully baked, let them cool completely right on the tray. Meanwhile, prepare the cinnamon sugar and the frosting. For the cinnamon sugar, you need cinnamon, sugar, and a pinch of salt. Give it a good mix. And for the frosting, combine all the ingredients: cream cheese, heavy cream, powdered sugar, salt, and optionally some vanilla. Whisk until smooth. When making sweets, just a pinch of salt changes the whole flavor. I mean, it takes it from delicious to addictive. Once the bread is cooled, transfer to a large bowl. If any pieces are stuck together, pull them apart. And add the melted butter. Mix really well. This butter acts as a glue for the cinnamon sugar, so be sure no spot is missed. Once the entire surface is buttery and wet, sprinkle in the cinnamon sugar. Mix well until all the sugar is absorbed by the butter. So my cinnamon balls are done. Let's try it out. Soft bread without a thick crust, plenty of cinnamon sugar, and smooth, heavy cream-based frosting. This low-effort cinnamon bread is insanely addictive and delicious. The difference between cinnamon rolls and this one is more airy because we bake it without heavy sugar and butter filling, which can weigh down the dough. And due to the shorter baking time, it has less crust and is softer. I'm sure this zero shaping cinnamon bread is gonna be a new favorite. If you change the seasonings, you can also make savory bread with this. This Korean cream cheese garlic bread is something everybody will like. The process is the same as the cinnamon balls up to the halfway point. Cut your dough into 3 cm cubes, ferment for 1 to 2 hours, bake at 170°C for 13 to 15 minutes, and leave to cook completely. While the bread is cooling, we gotta make the filling. First, for the cream cheese filling. In a bowl, add all the ingredients: cream cheese, honey, milk, and salt. Mix with a spatula until smooth. It might be hard to mix at first, but keep at it. It'll all come together in the end. Once it's smooth and soft, put it into a piping bag. We add milk not only to make it easier to pipe, but also get a better, softer texture. Next, for the garlic butter, just whisk together all the ingredients. Melted unsalted butter, egg, garlic, parsley, spring onion, cayenne, and salt. The paper says 35 grams of egg, but you can just add 1 whole egg. Be sure the butter is not too hot, or it will cook the egg. And the vegetables must be very finely chopped. This salty garlic butter pairs so well with the sweet cream cheese filling. Once the bread has cooled, we're gonna cut the necks on top of each bowl. Make sure to use a serrated knife, as this bread is too soft to cut with a regular knife. Don't cut all the way through, stop about 70% of the way down. Next, pipe the cheese filling. Use your fingers to gently open the eggs and pipe the filling deep into the center, so that the filling naturally fills the gaps without moving the nozzle right along the eggs. And then dip them in the garlic butter for 1 to 2 seconds and put them back on the baking sheet. Do the same with the rest. Once they're all done, pour the rest of the garlic butter all over them. Now they're full of garlic butter, for sure they're gonna taste amazing. And optionally top with some crushed potato chips, which has a beautiful look and extra umami. And bake them again at the same temperature, 170°C for 11 to 13 minutes until golden brown and a little crispy. Once baked, take them out. This bread definitely tastes better warm. When it's warm, the cream cheese filling is nice and soft, creamy, and melts in your mouth. It feels a bit like a warm gratin. I'd say at least it's 3 times richer than a regular garlic bread. This treat is sure to leave you feeling satisfied and fulfilled. So guess what? I got another delicious indulgent recipe here. Next up, donuts. This is another place where Tangzhong bread absolutely shines. Specifically, we're going with bombolone style donuts. They're made by deep frying round pieces of dough, poking the hole, and stuffing them with whatever filling you like. They're heavenly, and you never go back to store-bought donuts once you've tried them. So take as much dough as you need. 1 donut is made with 50 grams of the dough. In my case, I take 400 grams and make 8 donuts. Once you divide it into 50-gram portions, shape each into a smooth ball, just like we did for the burger buns. The largest piece is placed on the bottom. Dust with flour, flatten out with your hands, folding the edges, pinch the seam 4 to 5 times until there are no cracks and the surface looks smooth. And cut parchment paper into individual 15 cm squares, as many as the donuts, plus 1 extra sheet. Place these sheets on a large tray, and then lay the dough pieces on them. Then press them down firmly using another paper to prevent sticking. Although the final product will have a lot of vertical volume, they will start fermenting in this flat shape. Cover and ferment for 1 to 2 hours at room temperature until 1.5 to 2 times in size. Once that's done and they look visibly puffy, pour enough oil in a pot and heat it up to 165 to 180 C. Once it's nice and hot, lift the dough by the corners of the parchment and gently place it into the oil. This way you won't break the fragile structure full of air bubbles. I cook 4 donuts at a time, adjust the number depending on the size of your pot. Fry 3 to 3.5 minutes per side, so the total cooking time is around 6 to 7 minutes. After about 10 seconds, you can easily remove the parchment paper with tongs. Just slide it sideways without flipping the donuts. Around this time, large air bubbles should start to appear, mainly around the center line. Give them a poke with the tip of the thermometer. If you leave these bubbles intact, they will expand too much, making it impossible to flip the donuts. After 3 minutes, we're gonna flip them and cook the other side for another 3 to 3.5 minutes. You can easily flip them with the tip of the thermometer you are already using to check the oil temperature. No extra equipment needed. Speaking of the oil temperature, it's so crucial to maintain it within the right range. If it's too hot, it can get too dark. If it's too low, they absorb too much oil and becomes greasy. Greasy donuts are not pleasant to eat especially. So check the temperature more frequently than you think. Your success should be more important than looking cool and expensive, right? Once both sides are done and the center is heated through, fish them out with a slotted spoon or tongs. Transfer to a wire rack. Cool down a little bit, like 30 to 60 seconds. Then roll them in some granulated sugar to coat while they are hot, as sugar sticks to them better when they are hot. It gives the crust a little extra sweetness and satisfying crunch that contrasts with the soft, pillowy crumb. Once that's done, cool down completely on a wire rack. You can't pipe filling while they are hot. Once they are cooked, take a small knife. We're gonna cut the inside to create a pocket for filling. We're essentially splitting the inside in half to make a pocket, but just make sure that the tip of the knife doesn't poke through the opposite side. Now they're ready to be piped. Here I show you 4 delicious examples. First up, jam and whipping cream. This combination never fails. First, pipe the cream into it until about 2/3 of the pocket is filled, and then the jam. Fill the rest of the pocket. Go generously, as there's no such thing as too much whipping cream and jam. By the time you're done, it should feel plump and heavy. Now I can't wait, let me eat some. So my donuts are all done. Let's try it out. Whoa. Fluffy whipped cream combined with sweet and tangy fruit jam is simply heavenly. But the best thing about bomboloni is you can fill them with whatever you like. Here are 3 more of my favorites. This is diplomat cream. It's essentially a mixture of custard and whipped cream, but lighter than custard and richer and more flavorful than whipped cream. It gets the best of both worlds. This might be my favorite out of the 4. It's so simple to make, and I put the full details later in the bee sting cake section in this video. So be sure to check that out. Azuki beans. Let's try it out. It's one of the most famous bread fillings in East Asia and is made by simmering, mashing, and sweetening azuki beans. It's so hearty, comforting, and pairs so well with fatty donuts. If you're a fan of Asian sweets, definitely try it. If you're new to it, consider this your starting point. And some people should love Nutella. Just pipe how much you like, but Nutella is much sweeter and heavier than the other 3, so I pipe it moderately. Thick, gooey chocolate spread with fluffy donut. It's a must try for chocolate lovers. Speaking of Nutella, That is exactly what we're gonna be using for the next one. Nutella Babka! It's fun to shape, beautiful to watch, and delicious to eat. This chocolatey goodness is something you can't miss. Take 500 grams of the dough. This time I use cold dough from the fridge, by the way. Dust with flour generously on the work surface as well as on the dough, around 3 Hebrew tablespoons. When rolling out into a large sheet, you need to use more flour than you think. Roll out into a 60 by 30 cm rectangle with the longer side closest to you. So mainly move the rolling pin sideways from the center rather than back and forth. Dust with flour as necessary to prevent sticking. In this process, you don't need any special rolling pin skills, and here's why. Once you roll it out into a thin, rough rectangle, you can fix the shape as much as you like by just trimming the uneven edges and patching them up. Place the trim pieces onto areas lacking dough just like this. A little bit of dust, then press firmly so they stick. It's very important to make sure each part has the same volume of dough. Otherwise, your ring babka will look uneven. More like a neck pillow you use on a plane rather than a beautiful ring babka. Once you have a perfect rectangle, time to bring in the Nutella. Since room temperature Nutella is not as runny, microwave a bit, around 15 seconds to soften, and you can work efficiently with that. Pour the runny Nutella all over, leaving a 2 cm border free along the top edge. Scraper works great here as well. Spread it out gently and gradually. Once that's done, sprinkle the chopped nuts all over. Adding crunchiness is the easiest way to elevate the dish. Salted peanuts pair perfectly with Nutella, I think. But you can use any nuts you like. Pistachios, almonds, hazelnuts, or whatever. And start rolling it away from you. Since the sheet is so big, it's hard to roll up easily in one go. Roll gradually, part by part. Roll the right side a little, then the middle, then the left, and repeat. If any part sticks to the table, don't panic, you haven't messed up. Just use a scraper to gently peel it off. Once you reach near the top, bring the top edge onto the log and pinch firmly to seal the seam. And take a piece of parchment paper a little larger than the entire log. Dust a little bit of flour on the log and the parchment paper to handle more easily. Carefully transfer it onto the paper. Trim off both ends a little bit for a cleaner look. And cut it in half lengthwise with a knife. Just press it down, not the sewing motion. Thanks to the parchment paper underneath, your work surface won't be damaged. So once it's halved, face the cut sides up. As you can see, there are beautiful layers of Nutella. And parchment paper is surprisingly strong, but check the paper after cutting. If it's torn or weak, replace it now. We need to lift the dough later. Now, we're gonna start braiding. Cross the 2 strands in the middle to form an X. Braid outward from the center a little tightly, keeping the cut sides facing up. Bring the ends together into a circle. Pinch the strand ends firmly to seal. At this point, slide it to the middle of the paper. Make 4 cuts on the paper around the babka with scissors like this. Be sure not to cut too deeply. And carefully transfer to a 21 cm round tin. Or another option is you can bake it as a freestanding loaf directly on a large baking tray like this. Either way, it will look stunning. A lot happens during the shaping process, so get the game plan ready before you dive in. Cut the excess paper and cover and final ferment for 1 to 2 hours. This time I used cold dough from the fridge, so it took me a longer time, 3 hours. Once it puffs up beautifully, bake in the oven preheated to 170°C for 35 to 45 minutes or until 95°C, and we want the crust to be crisped up a bit. Meanwhile, we're gonna prepare some sugar syrup, which gives bread a glossy finish. Combine 60 grams of water and 80 grams of sugar in a small pan and cook over high heat until it dissolves. Set aside. Once baked, we carefully remove it from the tin and transfer to a wire rack. No need to remove the paper on the bottom, as handling hot bread can easily ruin its shape. And then, while the bread is hot, brush with the sugar syrup prepared earlier, which gives the crust a luxurious, shiny look, extra sweetness, and just a little bit of crunchy texture similar to a sugar glazed donut. We want to brush it generously from the top all the way down to the bottom. By the time it cools, the water in the syrup evaporates, only the sugar remains, it's no longer sticky. Once cooled, it's ready to enjoy. Remove the paper. If it looks too good to cut, enjoy the view for a while, then cut it into thin slices. It's super chocolatey, nutty, and indulgent. I love having plenty of nuts inside. The crunch is the perfect contrast to the gooey Nutella. The bread texture is nice and chewy, which is typical for heavy filled breads similar to German Stollen. Although the shaping probably takes the most time and effort in this video, this recipe is absolutely worth a try. So around here, we wanna take a break from sweet breads and sugar, and let's eat something savory. I don't want your back teeth to hurt just watching this video. So next up, pizza sliders. It's essentially pull-apart style burger, and I decided to go with super cheesy pizza filling, but you can put anything you like. First, divide the 500 grams of dough into 9 equal pieces, roughly 55 grams each. Shape them into smooth balls and transfer them in 20 cm or 8-inch square tin lined with parchment paper. Arrange them evenly like this, leaving some space between each. Cover and ferment for 1 to 2 hours until they puff up and join together like this. Meanwhile, let's make the pizza sauce. It's so simple to make, and homemade sauce always tastes much better than store-bought. So let's get chopping, and here's a 20-second ASMR. Now in a large pan, add the olive oil, garlic, and onion. Cook on medium-high heat until translucent for about 5 minutes. Use the biggest pan you have so that you can reduce the sauce quickly. Once the vegetables are cooked and no longer pungent, transfer them to a small bowl and add all the rest: tomatoes, salt, sugar, oregano, and cayenne. Blend everything with a hand blender until smooth. Pour it back in the pan and reduce it on medium heat, stirring constantly until thick and pasty. Be sure to reduce sufficiently, or it makes the bread soggy. Once that's done, transfer to a bowl and set aside. Now back to the bread. Once it has risen nicely and fill the gaps in the tin, I brush the top with a neck wash just like I did with the burger buns. And bake in the oven preheated at 170°C for 20 to 30 minutes until 95°C. Once that's done, take it out of the oven, and checking the in and out temperature is a great habit, especially if you just bake by time and often get underbaked gummy bread. With this habit, you will never suffer from that mistake again. Once it hits about 95°C, the interior structure is completely set and becomes light and bouncy. Good bread always needs that satisfying bounce. And lift it out by the paper and transfer to a wire rack. For extra shiny crust, you can brush with some melted butter if you like. I'm mixing some parsley by the way. Let it cool completely. Once cooled, cut horizontally right through the middle with a serrated knife. Remove the top half and set aside. And then, oh, that's a mistake. I must be getting tired. We wanna put the sauce after placing the bottom half back in the tin with the parchment paper. Spread about 2/3 of the pizza sauce evenly over the base. Save the leftover sauce for another dish, or you can use it when serving. Then sprinkle the shredded mozzarella. Don't be skimpy on this, we need a lot of cheese. And also top it with a choice of processed meat. I use salami, but you can also use sausage, frankfurt, ham, or bacon. If you're vegetarian, roasted mushrooms are nice and chewy and can be a great substitute. And return it to the oven and bake for 10 to 15 minutes or until the cheese melts. Once that's done, put the top half back on and transfer the wire rack. Now you have to move fast, we wanna eat it while the cheese is hot and melty. It pulls apart easily into individual pizza buns. Look at this cheese ball, which goes the best with homemade pizza sauce. It's incredibly fresh, slightly sweet, and has a kick of heat and perfectly balanced. If you never had pizza on fluffy bread, you got to try it. Italian people might not approve of this style, but we eat it anyway, cause it's just so good. If pizza is your thing, cheeseburger or pulled pork flings are also popular options for sliders. So finally, I wanna wrap up this video with another masterpiece. Beastie! Filled with a smooth diplomat cream topped with a crispy almond caramel layer, this ridiculously delicious German cake is something you definitely wanna learn how to make. The process includes a few more steps than the others, but not too difficult. I'm gonna take you through every single one of them. So start by making the custard cream. In a small non-stick pan, combine the egg yolk, milk, sugar, cornstarch, and some vanilla product you have. I added 12 grams of vanilla paste by the way. Whisk until smooth. Cook over medium heat, stirring constantly until 50% thickened, like the one on the right, which takes around 6 minutes. When you heat up this mixture, the cornstarch absorbs the milk and eggs and thickens. That might remind you of something. Yes, the science behind custard cream is actually the same as Tangzhong. Now that it's 50% cooked, remove from the heat and keep stirring. The residual heat will finish it. Then add the butter and let it melt and incorporate into it while stirring. Once that's done, transfer to a bowl. At this point, the cream may have some tiny lumps, but that's normal, and you will never notice them if you eat with bread. But if you care, you can even sieve it through like this. Cover with plastic wrap, pressing it directly onto the cream, so skin doesn't form. Chill completely. Next, we move on to the almond caramel, which adds a satisfying crunch and an irresistible nutty caramel flavor. This is exactly what makes this cake so special. In a bowl, add sugar, honey, salt, and melted butter, which is everything except the almonds. Whisk well until they distribute evenly. Don't worry about dissolving the sugar, and it's fine even if the butter separates from the other ingredients. Add the almonds, mix with a spatula to combine. Pour the mixture in a 20 cm or 8-inch square tin lined with parchment paper, which is the same thing as the pizza slider. Spread it out evenly and bake for 10 to 15 minutes in the oven preheated at 170°C until light brown stage like this. It gives you a mellow, classic sweet flavor that everyone loves. Or you can go until this darker brown stage if you prefer, which has a subtle bitterness and more complex flavor, making desserts feel luxurious. Whichever stage you choose, judge by color rather than time, as any oven is different. Once you got nice caramel, let it cool until no longer hot, at least 20 minutes. 20 minutes later, we move on to the cake layer. We want it to be a square that fits the tin perfectly, so I'm using the quick and easy method. First, roll it out. Try to make it as square as possible, making it slightly larger than the tin. And then place the tin on it. Cut off the areas that are sticking out around the edges. Transfer the main dough into the tin, and there should be some empty spaces in the corners, so just fill them in with trimmed off pieces of dough. pound or press them firmly to stick together. And just like that, the shaping is done. Simple, right? And final ferment for 1 to 2 hours until puffy. Once it has risen sufficiently, bake for 15 to 20 minutes. Then take it out of the oven. Keep the cake in the tin to cool completely. By waiting for it to cool in the tin, you can achieve a very clean, completely flat caramel layer. Once completely cooled, lift it out with a paper and transfer to a cutting board. Flip upside down. Remove the paper. Wow, it's so beautiful and looks unreal. Then cut it horizontally in half with a serrated knife. To achieve a straight, level cut without special equipment, don't just slice straight through from one side. Instead, look from the side rather than from above and cut into the edges bit by bit. Take your time, rotating the bread and working the knife slowly toward the middle until the cuts meet at the center. Once it's divided into two, at this point, you want to wipe off the excess butter on the paper and the tin, as this will stick to the bread, solidify and look better once chilled in the fridge. Place only the bottom half back into the tin, which was the top layer during baking. My beast thing is an upside down cake. And then pre-cut the top half into individual portions. We do this because we don't want to press down on the cake with a knife after the cream is put inside. It's up to you to decide how many pieces it's divided into. I divide mine into 9 equal pieces and set them aside. And the final part of this cake, make the diplomat cream. Take out the custard from the fridge. At this point, it must be chilled completely. So in a large bowl, put the custard cream, mix with a silicone spatula until completely smooth and loosen. Set aside. Then whip the cold heavy cream until stiff peaks. My hand blender happens to have a whisk attachment, so I use hand whisking also works. It should be firm, not soft stage, but just be careful not to over whip it. And then for the whipped cream in the custard, use a gentle J motion. Slice through the center of the cream with the edge of the spatula, rather than mixing vigorously. This minimizes how much the cream deflates and keeps it light and airy. If you use this diplomat cream for the donuts in the previous chapter, your job is done. Transfer the piping bag and pipe into the donuts and enjoy. Let me know how they turn out. But when you use it for this cake, I recommend stabilizing it with the gelatin. Otherwise, the cream is gonna squish out so badly and make a messy face and hands when you take a bite. So in a very small bowl, mix the cold water and the gelatin. Let it bloom for 5 minutes if it's needed. Mine doesn't, by the way. And then fill a pan with 1 centimeter of water. Bring it to a boil. Then remove from the heat. Place the bowl of gelatin in the water and keep stirring until it reaches 50 to 60 C. Melting isn't enough, you must reach 50 to 60 C. Once reach the right temp, remove the bowl from the pan. Use a damp towel to handle it, as it's hot. Then place a silicone mat under the bowl of cream to prevent it from slipping. A damp towel doesn't really work here, so use a silicone mat or you can ask someone to hold it for you. So here's the most tricky part. Pay close attention here. Pour the hot gelatin mixture on the diplomat cream in a thin stream while whisking quickly. You might worry, can I really add gelatin into cold cream like that? Won't it clump up? It's totally fine. Since the gelatin is surrounded by plenty of hot water, it will only start to set after it has been thoroughly mixed into the cream. That being said, if you're too slow, the gelatin can create lumps. Try working fast. Once all the gelatin mixture has been added and is evenly distributed, stop whisking. You don't want to over whisk. Put the cream on top of the bottom part. Spread it out evenly with a spatula. And then put the pre-cut top pieces on it. Try placing them tightly with no gaps. Cover and refrigerate until completely chilled and the cream has set at least 3 hours. Once it's nice and cold, take it out of the fridge and transfer to a serving plate. Cut it into individual pieces by following the lines of the pre-cut top pieces. Thanks to the gelatin, and also running your knife under hot water and wiping it dry between each cut, you would have a clean cut. Now it's ready to enjoy. Try it out. The cream is extremely rich, nice and airy, melts in your mouth. It's perfect. And the almond caramel layer is so crunchy, nutty, and toasty. It's full of flavor, which pairs so well with the diplomat cream. It's like eating a good creme brulee. And of course, the cake layers are nice and spongy, just like any of the other recipes. Without a doubt, this has to be the one of the best desserts in the world. And you should definitely make this amazing German sweet with the Tangzhong Brioche. Don't forget to subscribe, give it a thumbs up. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.